Hi there, and welcome to the Lightbulb Moments series with The Big Idea. I'm Nick Smith, the Rebel Ninja, and the co-founder of Smurgos. And today we have Sima Nawa introducing himself and joining us for some exciting discussion. Sima, welcome, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Nick. Hi, how are you? Hi to everyone who's going to listen to this. My name is Sima, otherwise known as a blind spot coach. I am a professional speaker, a transformational coach, and as transformational coach and an executive coach, transformational speaker as well. I'm also a diversity inclusion practitioner consultant. So that is a bit about me. Hi, Nick.
Awesome. Sima, you weren't always a transformational coach or a speaker. You actually started your journey off
Mhm.
as a computer science academic.
Yes.
So, quickly,
Yes, I
uh,
did. I did.
how did you move from computer science academic to transformational coach and speaker?
Well, this story is one that always takes me back to a moment that I'm not a fan of, but I do understand the power of telling our stories and sharing our experiences. So, um, for the most part of my adult life, I was a computer science academic, focusing in the area of programming. So I was a coder, the whole AI thing. That was my area. And I was on course to graduate in the year 2020. But unfortunately, due to an accident in December 2020 and the injuries that I suffered because of that, that led to me losing my sight the following year. That's January 2021. So that is how I transitioned from computer science to transformational speaker and coach. And that is literally what got me on this journey of speaking and sharing my story and impacting people and just doing the whole representation through the disability rights space and sharing the challenges, of course, but also sharing the successes at the same time. So that is how I ended up on this path that I am on now.
And I mean, as you say, that is a challenging and sore spot for you. Because I mean,
Mhm.
obviously you were an able-bodied person, and then you had that accident, and then became
Mhm.
a blind person almost overnight. That must have been a
Mhm.
very traumatic time for you. But I'm so happy to have you sitting here with me today as a person who
Mhm.
moved from victim to victor, because I often speak about that. As a person with a disability myself, we as
Mhm.
people with disabilities often have a choice. We can easily play the victim card, but we also have
Yes.
the opportunity to challenge that, right? And to
Mm.
also challenge the environment and society as a whole and almost become our own advocates. And I
Mhm.
see that as the victor. So I think that's really,
Yeah.
really cool. And linked to that, you created, which I think is such a cool name, you created the Blind Spot company, which I think is so cool.
Yes.
I think it's very clever. Um, Quickly tell us, how did you come up with the name of Blind Spot?
The blind spot, even if I had to say how the name came to me, I can't put it into words. I like to think of it as a divine moment, a moment of divine inspiration. Because for the longest time, I was trying to niche a space for myself. Like,
Mhm.
how do I represent myself, the community I belong to, in a way that sheds light but also speaks to who I am as a person. So,
Mm.
like you said, there, the blind spot is a quite clever thing, and it plays on the fact that I'm blind, but it also highlights a fact that I think is very important. And then B's like, we have to see more than what meets the eye, which
Mm.
is what my company tagline is. So, the blind spot was birthed out of seeing beneath the surface, not looking at things at face value.
Mm,
really unpacking, digging, trying to see what exactly things are made of, life, society, people. So it's really taking that thing beyond what we see with our naked eye, into trying to figure out, like, okay, people are more than just these, you know, entities that we interact with on a daily basis. People have
mm,
lived experiences, they have thoughts, they have feelings, they have values, they have beliefs, so many things like that make us so complex. So it takes really, like, we need to see more than what meets the eye in
mm,
most cases. So that's where the blind spot came from, and I think it accurately represents who I am, and I am so passionate about representation, because how we are seen and perceived and received in society, as persons with disability is so important. So there were people who were quite worried about the name, because
mhm,
they're like, okay, um, but then I explain it this way, like, I know a lot of people who omit the fact that they have a disability because of fear of backlash, of being chastised, of being ostracized, of being shut out and left out of missing opportunities. But I always say that if if that happens, that just means those people aren't supposed to be
mm.
in your path, in your life right now. So yeah, that's a long story, even longer, about the blind spot.
Well, it's fine because I mean, as I said, I really love the name, and I think it's so apt.
Yeah.
It's when I got to know you and then
Mhm.
looking a bit at your company and everything, I think it's just a perfect match. It's about who you are and instilling that in your actual brand, but then also
Mhm.
creating that awareness and shining that light on the blind spot
Yes.
that a lot of people, companies, managers often overlook. So I think it's really, really cool. So
Mhm.
with that in mind, when you are talking to and coaching corporates or managers or execs, how do you
Mhm.
tailor that program? How do you help them move their dial from where
Mhm.
they are to perhaps where they want to be, or like how they want to shift their perspective?
Well, it's very simple when it comes to tailoring programs. I always ask my clients, what is your why?
Mm,
Um, and the moment I understand what their why is, whether we have to go on a journey of discovering their why, because not everyone knows that
mm,
at first what their why is, why they want to improve their communication, why they want to speak with more confidence and with more authority or more power, or be able to express themselves or work on their interpersonal skills. So
mm,
all of those are different whys, and why they change obviously from the time we start coaching to the time that we conclude, and the why may change along the
yeah.
path. But I think it's important to understand people's whys, because that will help with the what, the when, the how, the where, even, and just being able to tailor those programs to meet their needs. I mean, it is all about the client and them getting a return on their investment, and them getting value for it. So 10 times out of 10, they don't even mind that I'm blind, because of the fact that they are getting value from this.
Mm,
That is also a question I get a lot. Like, don't your clients, like, aren't they wide? And I'm like, no, we're we're, we're not training because of my condition. Okay,
yeah,
we're not. This is not about me. It's all about them. So,
yeah.
making it focused on the client and what they need and what they want to achieve, is also important. So
Mm.
putting the people's whys first before anything else.
I think you highlighted two important things there. The first is finding your why and understanding why
Mhm.
it is that you're doing something. And that obviously comes from or ties into Simon Sinek's why, which I absolutely
Yes,
love. As you say,
I'm a big fan of this.
if you find that why, the why informs
Hmm.
everything else, the how, the what, and everything just kind of tends to fall into place. Um,
Hmm.
I found my why when I was in like um 34, so approximately like 6 or 7 years ago. I found my why,
Hmm.
and kind of I had always thought of that, but like that was the time where I really secured it, and it's informed every decision that I've made going forward. And I think it's really, really cool that you help coach that and you help bring light to that, because I think a lot of people tend to just go through the motions, right? Wake up, go to work, go home, repeat. And then when you shift that, you say like, okay, so why are you actually doing that? Or are you doing that for the right reasons? I also think it's really cool that when you say, let's say you want to work on your interpersonal skills or your communication skills, tying in their why also really helps, because it makes it more real for them and helps kind of guide them. I'm doing this for a purpose. I'm not just, getting coached by a guy and doing it because it's cool. I'm actually doing it because I'm shifting my whole perspective. I think that's really awesome. And so that was the first one. And then the second thing, I think you brought it in, is like, obviously as a blind person, and then you are working with sighted people, that is going to come in. I mean, even when we first started chatting, it's like, okay, cool, I'm talking to a blind guy. So it's cool that you bring that in and you say, no, they don't get thrown by that. Nicole and I were actually talking about this in our series chat, is that people with disabilities often bring different perspective. And I think that's what you perhaps bring that others might not, is you are seeing things, hearing things, and thinking about things from a different perspective. And that would only make their coaching experience even richer.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And that speaks to my company's tagline, seeing more than meets the eye. So and the eye is a play on the eye, the organ that we see, and also the I, the letter, the individual. So we need to see beyond both, beyond people face value and beyond what we can see with our naked eye. So yeah.
Wow, Sima, you're just like so deep, man. You're so deep. So, I was thinking like, this guy is so cool and he's like achieved so much, and now you're just raising the level each time. So, one thing I was kind of jealous about, it's still on my bucket list, is how you spoke at a TEDx event in Namibia. Now, just to shed some light there, TEDx has been one of my life goals for the last like 5 or 6 years. It continues to sit there on my list. So tell us a bit about that. I mean, your TEDx experience is cool. And then not only that, because you're an overachiever, you went and represented Namibia at the Pan-African Speakers Summit. So just you walk us through that whole experience.
We need to have a chat about why TEDx is still sitting on your bucket list, but that's a conversation for another day. You know what? I did TEDx in 2022. Yes, did TEDx in 2022, and I had only been practicing communication and speaking for 6 months before that. So I was really green, but that what do they say? An eager beaver.
Yeah.
I was I was really excited to be in this space. So came across TEDx auditions. I went for the audition, selected to speak, and became the first blind person to speak in TEDx the platform in Namibia. So that was another first. And my TEDx is titled "The Elephant in the Room," so go check it out. And I spoke about my experience as a blind person, in society, being active on social media. The other aspect was, technology and the role that has played in my life. And just, sharing. It was a very heavy topic, of course, but I made sure that I shared it in such a way that it's palatable to everyone in the audience. Like, heavy conversations become extremely light when you add humor and you make them lighthearted. So it was more a conversation. And that was a beautiful experience, and I got to test myself. The main goal was like, okay, let's try, right? What's the worst that could happen? And then you find out that you're going to speak, and you're like, oh my God, okay, okay. Then you start panicking, right? Because the imposter syndrome kicks in. Like, I even go, what if I freeze? What if I forget my? But with the proper training and coaching and my mentors guiding me through that, I would like to say I had fun. I had lots of fun on that stage. And then, of course, I'm representing Namibia, the Pan African Speakers Summit, last year. That was, again, eager beaver. I just like things. Nah. It's not even it's not even deep. I just like things, and I'm like, there was a call for speakers, and I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? Again, what's the worst that could happen? They say yes or no. Cool.
Yeah.
Applied for it, was selected. Again, the imposter syndrome sets in because it's a huge platform. You're speaking with giants on the African continent, right? And you're sharing a stage with these seasoned juggernauts in the communication space, right? But my mentor assured me, like, Sima, you are here on purpose and you belong here, right? So that was another beautiful experience. I spoke about Africa being the world, and I just spoke of things that have come from Africa, how Africa has influenced things like mathematics, science, coffee, um, what was the other one? That Africa is the world, right? Like every humanity was birthed here. The oldest remnants of human of our species is found in Africa. So I spoke to that and how we can, transform our stories as Africans so that they are relevant to other parts of the world. So that was my topic, and it was an amazing experience. So lucky, so blessed to even have graced these platforms, and that has been my journey so far. So um, it's really just having the audacity to try
Yeah.
and the courage to fly, and allow yourself to do so, and you will be surprised what you can achieve. So, Nick, TEDx this year, yes, thank you.
No pressure. Okay, cool. We'll definitely talk about that in more detail offline. But everyone
Yeah.
listening and watching this, watch this space. So, Sima, with your experience in TEDx and that the Pan African Summit and everything,
Mhm.
do you think it was a big step for you and for others in general in terms of raising that awareness and that acceptance that you spoke about? So yes,
Mhm.
I know your topics may have, like, the elephant in the room was your TEDx talk. And that was
Mhm.
obviously focused exactly on that. But then your Pan
Mhm.
African Summit one was more general and about how Africa is the world. But do you think
Mhm.
you as a speaker, you getting up on stage, how do you think that
Mhm.
impacted your audience and perhaps their sense of awareness and things like that?
I think there's so much power in being first,
Mm,
but there is so much more power in having others follow after that. So once I get into it, makes sense for me to be the only person that exists in the space. Um, so there are projects that I'm taking on right now that are getting persons with disabilities to use their voice to speak for themselves. Because I don't like the notion of, oh no, I'm the poster child for persons with disabilities. I want to be the voice for the voiceless. No, people have voices. People have their own life experiences, their
mm,
own stories they want to tell. So yeah, but I digress. I think it was super important for the audience to experience that and to have that, just to have that. Oh, okay, so that's actually a thing, right? Like Hermine likes to say, it's very difficult to hold onto your biases
mm,
once they become a person. Um,
mm,
so people's bias, I could feel the biases, the stereotypes, the stigmas just dissolve when I was on these stages, when I was in these spaces. And they're like, oh wow. And then the conversation starts, right? They start asking questions. Okay, how do you do this? How do you do this? How do you share memes? How do you,
yeah.
like how do you use your phone? So it opens a bigger conversation. Like this being on the stage is cool, but for me, it's the conversations that happen afterwards.
Mm,
Those are the ones that help really break the stereotypes and break barriers, overcome boundaries, in ways that we can build more acceptance and empathy and understanding in society when we have those conversations.
mm. As
Mhm,
a person with a disability, I often think it's kind of our I'm gonna say duty in inverted commas. That sounds too hectic, but
mhm,
like
mhm,
kind of opening the door for that conversation because, like you said, the talk was cool, but the conversation and
mhm.
the questions that happened afterwards,
Oh,
it was even better, right? And I think for me,
yes.
that's also the case. Like
Mhm,
in my exposure with children and teaching children, and then speaking in at schools and speaking to adults,
mhm,
speaking in corporate spaces. Um,
mhm,
the presentation is cool, but
mhm,
that awareness and that switch that you flick in their minds, like, wait, he's
mhm,
here, let me ask him this, or I haven't thought of that
mhm.
like that before. How do you do
Yeah.
that? You were saying like, do memes work and things like that? People often
Mhm,
would be interested, like, how do I send this? Do I send a meme to
mhm,
to Sima or do I not? And the same for me. It's like, you know, how do you um how do you do your shoes? And
mhm,
like something as simple as that, but like it's a thing
mhm,
that's
mhm. Yeah.
sticking in their
Yes.
brain. Like, how does he do it?
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
so I think that's really, really cool. And I think that awareness is
mhm,
so powerful. Um, Not only in the speech itself, but the knock-on effects that it has, in people's minds, because they'll go home and they'll speak to people in their family, right? And they'll say like,
mhm. Oh,
oh,
yeah.
there was this guy that spoke and blah,
Mhm.
blah, 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 blah. So I think that's really, really cool.
Yes, exactly.
So talking about shifting the dial, talking about that knock-on effect and the ripple effect that, these interactions can have, what do you think
Mhm,
are the biggest challenges or barriers to um, normalizing disability in the corporate space or normalizing disability in society as a whole?
mhm.
What do you think we have to overcome?
Yo, there's so many things that we still need to overcome, but I think the major one is centered around awareness and
Mm,
acceptance and just education and sensitizing. So, um, but that is all centered around also having conversations. So when you do corporate training, when you do, social sensitivity campaigns and stuff like that, um, it's important that we don't sound like a government manifesto.
mm,
Am I making sense? Like, like, um, I think it's best that we focus on not calling people out, but calling them in to the
mm,
conversation. Um, because the fact is, people don't know. And the fact that I don't know means I am more likely to not even engage in that because the fear of backlash,
mm,
cancel culture, shaming, naming and shaming people. Um, so I think it's very important and even that we even understand that we're dealing with people
mm,
and these are human beings, again, with different life experiences, different values, different beliefs. So we need to be very aware about how we approach the conversation.
mm,
Otherwise, it does create a cognitive dissonance and people become very apprehensive to this. Like, okay, you're forcing this on me instead of um, me showing you how it could benefit not only you, but the bigger picture as well.
mm,
So I think the biggest challenge we face is around education, sensitizing, um, and also just access to resources. I think it's very important that we make resources and opportunities more accessible to persons with disabilities. Specifically, like this is what I'm talking about. So, and when they have access to things like quality education or quality opportunities, then people can actually make something of themselves, right? They can contribute to society, to the economic growth of the country. So, education is definitely at the center of empowerment. Sensitizing is also at the center of those conversations. So yeah, I think those are some of the challenges that we still need to overcome.
I agree with you there. And maybe we need to unpack this in another chat. But
Mm-hmm.
I think you touch on two important things there in terms of outsiders or people without disabilities, the fear
Mm-hmm.
that they have, because I've come across that too.
Yes.
Um, you know, oh, I don't know if I'm going to say the right thing, or I don't know if I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
greet them right or whatever. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that can create a barrier itself. So the interaction hasn't
Mm-hmm.
even started because they're too afraid to engage. And
Exactly.
I always say, go for it, chat to the person, and then find out.
Mm-hmm.
They'll,
Yes.
we also, as people with disabilities, we know that it's uncomfortable for people without disabilities, and we kind of,
Mm-hmm.
we can help you navigate that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but if you don't start engaging with us at all, then how can we fix that? I think tied into that was my second point that I think you raised that was really important, which is we don't know what we don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
in a corporate space or again, people without disabilities often have that moment where, oh, this is the first blind person I've spoken to, or this is the first wheelchair person, a person in a wheelchair, sorry, that that I've
Mm-hmm.
engaged with or that I've worked with. And those firsts are so important because it lays the foundation for any interactions that follow. So
Exactly.
again, if we can create those voices, we can create those conversations, if we can start that discussion and make it more,
Mm-hmm.
prevalent, more normal, more uh,
Mm-hmm.
colloquial, like it's not a thing. We are doing,
Mm-hmm.
as people with disabilities, we are living our lives. We are getting out and doing things, and we do it slightly
Yeah.
differently, but we're doing it
Mm-hmm.
nonetheless. And I think those conversations are really, really cool. So, Sima, it's been
Exactly.
awesome, awesome chatting to you. Before you go, please just let us know if anyone
Mm-hmm.
wants to speak to you about your coaching or about, engaging with you for a speech. How would they get hold of you?
Okay, so you can just, I think the easiest is to send an email to the blindspotcc@gmail.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me by email. Or on social media. Instagram is a blind spot coach. LinkedIn is Sima Nawa, Simalumba. Now, that's my LinkedIn, so you can get a hold of me on any of those platforms, and we have a conversation um about what your why is, and then we get started. So yeah,
Well, once again, Sima, thank you so much for joining us today on the Light Bulb Moments series with the big idea. And I'm looking forward to another chat with you soon.
it was wonderful, Nick. Thank you for having me, and I hope this lights more light bulbs. I hope we have more light bulb moments like this. These conversations are needed and they're necessary. And thank you for having me again. I had so much fun.
It's a pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers, Nick.